No, there ain't no stopping us. Fly without boarding pass. Couldn't catch me, I be moving fast. Call me a shooting star. Let 'em know who you are. Flying up in a bar. Wish on a star. Time to show 'em who's in charge. Call me a shooting star. Didn't even get to bronze. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass. Looking at a shooting star. Got more than a couple of people going mad. I swear they're rooting hard. Tell them I be big in the game like she went and got them breast implants. I said I'm moving too fast. Didn't even get to glance. I'm ready to eat up track like I'm seated in a restaurant. If you had swag like mine, you know it's best to flaunt. We aren't hating because you want. Shine beyond. Rock like kings of Leon. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Shooting stars across the galaxy. I stand out, so don't be mad at me. Infiltrate, I'm with my strategy. When I turn up, then I just have to leave. Yeah, shoot. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting. Yeah, shooting shots. Shooting stars. Didn't even get to bronze. I said I'm moving too far. Get to glass.
Well, hello everyone. For those of you who have not joined me for one of these before, it is a get ready with me, as I am going to be doing some more filming tonight, so I needed to put my face on, and I have a couple committee meetings, so I might as well look somewhat decent. I have a backlog of clips, so I figured, even though it's late, I'm going to do one of them today, and I might as well do it live. So we've got a little bit of a smorgasbord, and again, I am getting ready. Gotta moisturize the under eyes here, and then we'll get started. And for the ladies or the gents who are interested, this is a little argan oil. It is really, really good for getting some of those dry areas. But okay, let's see what clips I have queued up because I am not even exactly sure. So let's get this started, okay?
And here's the thing about Joe Biden. He constantly says things about the Constitution that are kind of true, and then he just proceeds to ignore them. So I want to flash you back to the middle of the campaign, and Joe Biden is being interviewed by George Stephanopoulos, Democratic operative and ABC News anchor. And George Stephanopoulos is asking him why exactly he can't just do things. Why don't you just do things? If you become president, why don't you just do things? And Joe Biden says, you're going to have to use the legislature because there's this thing called the legislature. It's in the Constitution. And the president cannot just govern by executive fiat. If he does, this makes him a dictator. Okay, now this is not me saying this. It happens to be true. It's not me saying this. It is Joe Biden saying this. Here's Joe Biden, circa just a couple of months ago, talking about how presidents are not supposed to govern by executive fiat.
The one thing that I have this strange notion, we are a democracy. Some of my Republican friends and some of my Democratic friends even occasionally say, well, if you can't get the votes by executive order, you're going to do something. Things you can't do by executive order unless you're a dictator. We're a democracy. We need consensus.
Oh, we need consensus, do we? And also, you can't just do things by executive order. Is it? Also, that'd be a dictatorship if there was just one guy who could, just use executive orders and put his whims into law that way. Wouldn't that be kind of dictatorial, it seems? Okay, now, flashback to the present. Joe Biden is now the president of the United States. According to Hank Berry at Daily Wire, through Monday, January 25th, the sixth day of his tenure in office, Joe Biden had issued 28 executive orders, dwarfing the initial number of executive orders issued by former presidents in the initial days of their tenure.
Ah, I see my microphone got muted. Sorry about that. I was commenting that, when it comes to Ben Shapiro's content, I like it about half the time. I dislike it about half of the time. But this particular clip, I agree with 100%. But big surprise, right? Politicians being hypocritical. But the stark contrast, I mean, he just couldn't wait to whip out that executive order pen. Now, could he? Those people who were cheering Trump for executive orders, they're getting a good taste of their own medicine now. I don't like it when any of them did it, so I can be consistent here. But isn't that something? I wonder what he would do, if confronted with the two different realities. Just go, come on, man, I'm expecting that is what the reaction would be. But we need to remember this. He talked a good game, but when, the ring of power is actually presented, we see what happens, correct? Correct. So we're going to go on to another Shapiro clip. I think he's interviewing Megyn Kelly. And I'm going to be trying to put on my Lashify lashes. It's an at-home lash extension kit. Most of you have seen me work this before, but we shall see if it's a disaster this time.
I think it might be a good idea for President Biden to call a climate emergency.
Why?
Because then it relates to what you're saying. Then he can do many, many things under the emergency powers of the president that wouldn't have to go through, that he could do without legislation. Now, Trump used this emergency for a stupid wall, which wasn't an emergency. But if there ever was an emergency, climate is one. So I would suggest that they explore looking at climate as an emergency, which would give them more flexibility. After all, it's a crisis.
Here I am with the stupid microphone being on mute again because I don't have my headphones. They're bugging on me, and I'm going to have to edit all that part out. But so what they're going on about, and the People's Party really got into this a lot more, is they want to exploit a loophole in Obamacare. And what they're claiming is that Biden, at least the People's Party is claiming this and they're encouraging it, is that Biden can just through executive order under the pandemic emergency clause or emergency powers, declare just by fiat, declare Medicare for all. Can you imagine that? So that's what they're encouraging here. If you're not catching what they're, if you're not picking up what they're laying down, that's what they're insinuating. And that is freaking horrifying. It is horrifying. And you want to know what? After seeing the way we just, not we, meaning libertarians, I got my own complaints about libertarians in some sense. I'm meaning more we, the American people. I think we'll just lay down and take it. You know, we have a king now. We have effectively a king. With all these executive orders that we let go by, we have a monarchy. It's terrifying. It's very, very terrifying. And the funny thing is, they're encouraging Biden to do things that they were fear-mongering of the scope Trump would do, and he didn't. Yet they want Biden to do it. Again, to repeat David Davis, who is repeating me, politicians being hypocrites. Oh my God, I am shocked. And in other news, water is wet. But that wasn't obviously the Megyn Kelly clip. I forgot about that. But yeah, stay tuned for when I do the People's Party, because you'll see them totally wanting Biden to do this. So, on to the next clip while I'm picking out another eyelash.
So why impeach? I really do think, because they don't need to remove him, and they knew that. They already had the win, right? Just take the W. I think it really was because they want that "you can never run again" ban to be slapped down on him. They want Trump to not only go away, but to never return again. They're afraid of him and his power. And number two, I think they really want to force the Republicans into either siding with Trump or siding against Trump to sort of foment that civil war within the Republican Party, which is good for the Democrats.
To me, it looks like that is the win-win scenario for Chuck Schumer and Nancy Pelosi here, is that either you get the Republicans to vote in favor of banning Trump, in which case Trump just goes and has one of his allies run for president in the Patriot Party 4 years from now as a rebuttal to the if Trump still cares, which he does. I mean, he's not somebody who takes slights lightly, for sure. He launches some sort of third party. That party gains 20% of the vote. And from now on, you basically have a one-party state with the Democrats winning from here to the rest of time.
Okay, what's interesting is he acts like third parties haven't been around, and that if there's a third party that all of a sudden now, you're going to blame the third party, that's going to put the Democrats in power. How about you guys just not have shitty candidates, and then, why don't you take some personal responsibility? I mean, that was just complete bullshit. And really, you think you're going to get 20% of the vote? These people, these mainstream commentators, Tucker Carlson did it, now Ben Shapiro's doing it. I don't think they have any freaking idea of the ballot censorship that's out there. I really think that they're utterly ignorant about that. Seems like it's a little uneven, but good enough for me. Good enough. Well, maybe, I don't know. It's bothering me, that little bald spot, I think, there. So that's just... It's not going to be quite so easy for there simply to be a Patriot Party and then to come in and then, so now it's going to be Trump's fault or someone, some third party's fault, that they spoiled, that they stole votes. No, you aren't owed votes. And, if that happens, that happens. It's, but I think, though, that the analysis as far as why are they pushing for the impeachment is correct. The Democrats are looking to game the splits that are in the Republican Party. But again, I'm going to bring up the People's Party again. They've got a split of their own coming up. And Ben Shapiro really hasn't mentioned the People's Party. I don't think it's on his radar. But they'll keep the Democrats from being a one-party country. There's a lot going on. This is an exciting time, I think, coming up. I say let them form the Patriot Party. Let's see what they can do. Maybe we'll start to get rid of these ballot censorship, huh? Maybe. Maybe. Let's continue.
Mm-hmm. I do think the law is going to be critical over the next 4 years, and I've been tweeting about this. I think too infrequently we've resorted to the law, and it can be used. There was a great op-ed in the Wall Street Journal that I really supported by Jed Rubenfeld, he's a Yale professor. He's married to Tiger Mom, Amy Chua, and Vivek Ramaswamy, who's a business executive in medical, I think in drugs, and has made $1 billion. But they wrote this thoughtful piece on how big tech was essentially being used as an arm of government at this point. They're so big, and they've been offered both carrots and sticks, mostly by the Democrats, to do what they want to do, that they need to be treated as big government in this way, that they're not allowed to crack down on free speech the way most private industries are allowed to crack down on free speech. And they have special obligations now to not allow viewpoint discrimination.
Here I am again with the mute button. Somebody's going to have to keep reminding me. Okay, I've got an article up here, and I want to finish these lashes and do a little bit of an intro to it. And basically, what I was saying is I think they're right on point here. And this is where libertarians are going astray in treating these tech companies as if they are sheerly private industries. They're not. They are functioning as an arm of the state, and we need to treat them so. We need to not be foolish, because what we're doing, I think a lot of libertarians are proving to be the living example of that Soviet joke that says that they will hang the last capitalist with the rope that same capitalist sold them. And I think that's what we're doing now with the way some libertarians are defending big tech. But it's a private company, is it? Is it really? And I wanted to go through this op-ed a little bit here that Megyn Kelly referenced, and I have up on the screen. I can't read the whole thing in full, obviously, because I'll get hit with copyright, but we can do fair use by doing some commentary with it. So I have the cover up there, but let's go to the first page of it, and I'll just do some highlights. It talks about, obviously, the banning of Trump and, everything that we've talked about before, because they claimed it was dangerous and incitement to violence and all of that. And I want to read a little bit here. It says, conventional wisdom holds that technology companies are free to regulate content because they're private, and the First Amendment protects only against government censorship. That view is wrong. Google, Facebook, and Twitter should be treated as state actors under existing legal doctrines. Using a combination of statutory inducements and regulatory threats, which these big tech companies have been in bed with enacting in order to stifle competition. Congress has co-opted Silicon Valley to do through the back door what government cannot directly accomplish under the Constitution. And that is very, very important. That is something libertarians really need to get through their head. So to go on to the next page, or is it on this page? Did I miss one? Well, I think it's, oh no, I see, because I had something in the way. That Norwood versus Harrison decision, really, really interesting, which quote that government may not induce, encourage, or promote private persons to accomplish what is constitutionally forbidden to accomplish. They cannot do it through proxy. And that is exactly what is going on. But it goes on to say that that's exactly what Section 230 does. Not really going to get into Section 230 too much, but I just want this concept to maybe sink in and give you some food for thought.
You're just simply saying we're all liars. And I said it was
wrong thing. I didn't want to go to the next one. I wanted to go to the next page here. And it talks about how the courts have held that these types of immunity can turn private action into state action. I think that's exactly what is going on. So let's read again. Section 230 is the carrot, and there's also a stick. Congressional Democrats have repeatedly made explicit threats to social media giants if they fail to censor those speech the lawmakers disfavored. And it gives some examples and says these threats have worked. And again, I don't want to get into copyright issues here, but it gives some more examples. But let's go to that last paragraph there. Either Section 230 or congressional pressure alone might be sufficient to create state action. But the combination surely is. Suppose a Republican Congress enacted a statute giving legal immunity to any private party that obstructs access to abortion clinics. Suppose further that Republican congressmen explicitly threaten private companies with putative laws if they fail to act against abortion clinics. If these companies did as Congress demands, then got an attaboy from lawmakers, progressives certainly would see the constitutional problem. And I hope libertarians would as well. I'm not so concerned about progressives. I'm concerned with cleaning our own house. Go on to the next page. And, you know, the second paragraph says what I said. Liberals should worry too. Let's switch that around. Libertarians should worry too. If big tech can shut down the sitting president, they can shut down anybody. We should know that above all people. And that last sentence, that last paragraph is really poignant. Hard cases make bad law, and Mr. Trump presented America with a hard case. The breach of the Capitol is a stain on American history, and Silicon Valley seized on the attack to do what Congress couldn't do by suppressing the kind of political speech the First Amendment was designed to express. But here are the money quotes, the last two paragraphs, and I really, really want you guys to consider this. There's more at stake than free speech. Suppression of dissent breeds terror. As I've often said, if you take away words, all we have left is violence. The answer to last week's horror should be to open more channels of dialogue, not to close them off. If disaffected Americans no longer have an outlet to be heard, the siege of Capitol Hill will look like a friendly parley. A pun not intended, I'm sure, compared with what's to come. This is the money of the money quotes, this last paragraph. Ordinary Americans understand the First Amendment better than the elites do. Users who say Facebook, Twitter, and Google are violating their constitutional rights are right. Aggrieved plaintiffs should sue these companies now to protect the voice of every American and our constitutional democracy. Absolutely freaking correct. And libertarians need to learn that. That article said it, and I'm very grateful for Megyn Kelly bringing that up. That article said it way more artfully than I had been trying to say over these past few weeks. Now, in that discussion with Ben Shapiro, there were some things said that libertarians and myself, obviously, would not agree with. They were arguing that since anti-discrimination law has gone far beyond what it was initially intended to do, that conservatives should press to have political speech a protected category. Now, obviously, I think all of those laws need to go. I certainly don't want to expand them. And I can't see any realm in which political speech should be a protected category. You know, even though that would probably serve my interests. Because, you know, our speech is going to be even more disfavored. You know, you have Brennan saying libertarians are potential domestic terrorists. It's crazy. Absolutely crazy. Putting on some foundation here, or primer, as it's called. All right, so now on to this next clip. And it's Dave Smith, I believe, who is reviewing yet another clip. We're at clipception. We're just reviewing clips. Wait, just a little bit off of my hand here. That is such a lovely primer. I think it's Urban Decay. Yeah. Optical illusion. It's really like smooth and lovely. All right, next clip.
You're just simply saying we're all liars. And
I said it was a lie that the election was stolen.
Premise that you're right and we're wrong. Well, let's talk about the specifics of it. In Wisconsin, tens of thousands of absentee votes had only the name on them and no address. Historically, those were thrown out. This time they weren't. They made special accommodations because they said, oh, it's a pandemic, and people forgot what their address was. So they changed the law after the fact. That is wrong. That's unconstitutional. And I plan on spending the next 2 years going around state to state and fixing these problems. And I won't be cowed by liberals in the media who say, there's no evidence here and you're a liar if you talk about election fraud. No, let's have an open debate. It's a free country.
There's no widespread evidence of election fraud that overcame the results.
Pause it right there. Now that one's a little bit more obvious, isn't it? So what's here? Very specific example in Wisconsin where there were no addresses on the mail-in ballots, and normally that would lead to them being thrown out. This case, it wasn't because of the pandemic, and there's no reason why the pandemic would make people not know what their address is. So and Rand Paul, to his credit, I mean, I really admire that he said this. He's like, no, we're going to have an open and honest conversation about this. I don't care if some liberal's going to try to bully me. And then, he says this is a free country, which I don't know how much Rand Paul's checked the country lately. We're not actually that free, but I really like what he did there. And what does George Stephanopoulos respond immediately? There's been no widespread evidence of voter fraud. They fall right back to their talking points, and when they cannot deal with the specific example that you just gave to them.
But isn't it great? You're a journalist, and hey, look, there's a prominent Republican senator just gave you some evidence. So
seems like a story.
You better change the reporting here.
Right. Yeah, it seems like if you were a real journalist, you go, huh, that's an interesting story. Maybe we'll send a guy out on that,
Yep, he's got a point. I agree with Stephanopoulos that I don't think there was widespread voting fraud. That was enough to change the outcome. But it is funny the way when specific credible examples are given, they're just hand wave away. You should be concerned about what happened there in Wisconsin. I don't even think Rand was suggesting that it was going to change the outcome of the election, but it certainly is something that is worth complaining about. And any journalist would want to get to the bottom of it, see if that's credible, and if it is, call it out, or see if it's bull, and if so, debunk it. Don't we all deserve that? This is just, it's so ridiculous what is going on. It's all about your team and partisanship. Nobody really cares about the truth. And, in this case, he's picking on the left. But, the right does it equally. And, I've shown plenty of clips of that, as well. It's just, this particular example happens to be the left. And we're probably, because, when the left is in power, we're going to have more criticisms. That's kind of the way it is, particularly when it's a majority all the way through. The Republicans will all of a sudden remember that they're supposed to be small government until they get back in power, and then they seem to forget, right? Okay, do I have one or two left? I can't remember. I think I might only have one, and let me preface this clip because it might seem a little weird. I watch a lot of content. I watch content I agree with and content I disagree with, and some people, get all freaked out at some of the things I watch. I like hearing all points of view, multiple points of view, no matter, how different they may be. This next clip is from a pastor that I watch. Now, he was someone that I really followed a lot in my fundamentalist days. He's a very big brain, very intelligent, but, you know, of the fundamentalist side, which is something that I don't particularly follow anymore or as personal doctrine, but I still watch the best out of all categories. And he is going to cite a religious author that has some points that I think we could really take to heart, though the author is someone I didn't even agree with even in my fundamentalist days. The author is Rushdoony, who is a complete theocrat. He's a proponent of a view called theonomy. If you hadn't heard it, what that is, it's basically, you know, they want biblical law to be civil law, you know, to some people complete with stoning. I mean, it can get quite horrifying. So yes, I realize who he's quoting I would have a lot of problems with, but even a broken clock is right twice a day. I'm getting all tongue-tied. So I believe that's the clip that's next. I wanted to preface it. Yes, it is a preacher. Ignore all the religious stuff, if you will. There are some nuggets in there that I think we can suss out. So let's take a listen.
I want to read you a little something, and hopefully it'll be useful to you. Let me just read a couple paragraphs, and hopefully we'll move on from there. In economics, redistributive legislation in Marxist countries means the open transfer of land and wealth from private ownership to the state as the trustee of all the people. In the democratic nations, the same redistributive goal is achieved by a variety of means, most notably the inheritance tax and the income tax. In the United States, 75% of all farms, businesses, and activities are wiped out by the death of the owner because of the confiscatory nature of the inheritance tax. The income tax works annually to redistribute wealth, as does the property tax and a variety of other taxes. In fact, the goal of taxation can no longer be said to be the maintenance of civil order and justice. Rather, its goal is social revolution by means of taxation. Taxation has indeed become the new and most effective method of revolution. It is the reactionary redistributionists who still think in terms of the armed overthrow of existing orders. The more liberal ones know that taxation is the more efficient means of revolution. In politics, the redistributive state works to equalize and scatter all independent sectors, whether religious, racial, or economic, which can form pockets of strength and resistance to the saving power of the state. Catch that phrase, the saving power of the state. The redistributive state wants no dissident minorities, only an undifferentiated and submissive majority. Now, just stop for, I'll tell you what this is in a second, but do you remember when I read the story of the Uyghur woman in China who survived 2 years in the Uyghur re-education camp? Remember what they were being taught. Remember what they were being asked to find to be good was a populace of undifferentiated people. And I happen to be a certain kind of Chinese people. They want to be in the majority. But that's what they want. They want an undifferentiated and submissive majority. That's what China's doing right now. These words were written almost 50 years ago. Almost 50 years ago. In brief, the redistributive state wants a world beyond good and evil. Where there is no good nor evil, there can be no criticism and no judgment. So, we are forced to conclusion, in a world beyond good and evil, there is no standard for condemning a civil government, and the civil law is thus beyond criticism. Moral judgment disappears and coercion replaces it. In fact, where there is no moral law and no God whose court is the source of all law and judgment, then the only binding force in any social order is coercion. Thus, the more humanistic a state becomes, the more coercive it becomes. The brutal slave labor camps of the Marxist states are not aberrations. Notice it says are. This is before the fall of the Soviet Union. Are not aberrations, nor errors of principle on their part. They are the logical outcome of their humanism. The humanistic state replaces God's predestination with man's plan of predestination by total coercion, and it replaces God's moral law with a purely coercive law whose purpose is alien to man's being and destructive to it.
Now, I obviously do not agree with all that, basically saying if you don't have religion and if you're humanistic, that, you're going to turn toward coercion. But I do think if you're not careful, if you don't have a belief in the inherent rights of humans and our inherent rights to be free from coercion and our inherent natural negative rights, you are going to turn to the state as a type of God. So in that sense, I thought there was really a lot, and I'm keeping that one eye closed to dry. I think there was a lot to be gleaned there. And it was very interesting the way he talked. I'm just trying to keep one eye open and just shut the one, about how taxation is actually a means of revolution, the state's revolution against the people. Very, very interesting, and it's interesting that that was written 50 years ago. I wonder, what Rushdoony would think today about that. So I think those truths can be separated from that hyper Calvinistic religious context it was stated in, and that's why I thought it was valuable to bring up. Let me pull off this template. Oh crap, well I didn't get the wing. I got it all on the template. Let's see if we can fix that. The template was too clear. Of course I'm going to mess this up. Okay. See what happens when you have hooded eyes. You've got to like thicken it on the top because you see how it does that whoop, that weird thing. The struggle is real. Yep, I'm fucking this up. I'm gonna have to fix this. Whoa, way too black. Here we go. We're doing like an Amy Winehouse look here. Oh, definitely gonna have to clean this up. But yeah, we're definitely going for the Amy Winehouse effect. Okay, well, I'll get out my makeup sticks and clean that up a bit. Let me pull those out now. And we are going to talk a bit about some general liberty. What? Excuse me, I should have had these out already. We're going to talk about some general LP news here in a minute as well. But I was hoping to see if there are any comments on the things we've discussed so far. These are little makeup eraser sticks. But I'm probably gonna, oh man, I really made a mess. But you see how it is, cleaning it up a little bit. Just gotta be patient. Okay, doesn't seem like there is. So, with half of my eye done, and I look like a crazy person, let's go on to some Libertarian Party news and some ballot access news. Now, by the time I got around to talking about this, there's already good news. But that doesn't mean we shouldn't still talk about it, because I don't think we're always aware that this type of stuff is going on. Okay, let me let that dry a bit. Okay, that's already looking a little better. Okay, where's my glasses? So, let me put this up on the screen here if I can. Okay, so here was a call to action from the Libertarian Party of Indiana, where it says GOP punishes libertarians for rainwater success. We are very familiar with these tactics, aren't we? So, let's go over here. And here's the press release that was going to go out, that there was a bill that allegedly sought to remove the uneven disparity, right, between major and minor parties, saying it was unfair that Republicans and Democrats have to collect signatures from 4,500 voters to secure their candidates in the publicly funded primaries, while libertarians are not required to gather signatures for their candidates nominated at a privately funded convention. And it goes on to say, Representative Manning is correct. There is an uneven disparity in our election laws, but that disparity shifts the burden to minor parties and not vice versa. Minor parties are saddled with additional and complicated filing requirements and are barred from participating in the primaries, cannot access the voter registration list during non-election years, cannot have official election day poll workers, and many additional hurdles. And this bill doesn't address any of those disparities. It's just trying to cripple us from being real competition. And it goes on to say, forcing the signature gathering requirements for primary participation on a minor and much smaller party without any of the benefits or rewards for participating in a primary is not fair or equitable. So that is really, really interesting. They're always, and lately it's been the Republicans, so I'm sure if the Democrats felt we were threatening them, you know, they would do it too. This isn't strictly a Republican character trait. I'm sure we're going to see the Democrats doing it to the People's Party when they start, you know, being the quote-unquote spoiler, which I am just so looking forward to. Okay, that's getting much, much cleaner. So, before I could even talk about this, though, and this is good news, it had already reversed itself. So, in this next Libertarian Party of Indiana press release, oh no, that's the wrong one, isn't it? Let's go to the next scene. Huh, what happened to it? I seem to have put the same thing. I'm just going to read this then. I don't have it up on the screen. So let's go to where I am full screen then. Here we go. So I have it here. There was another press release that I think that was February 2nd. This one was January 12th. So within 4 days, that bill had been pulled and it appears dead. But the call is that we must remain vigilant because this constantly happens. And the quote from Tim McGuire, who's the chair of the Libertarian Party of Indiana, was precious. It was perfect. He said, it's obvious to anyone paying attention that the party of Trump has abandoned any notion of small government principles and is hemorrhaging supporters. Instead of looking inward and reforming, they blame third parties for their failures. Because in Indiana, for the first time in modern history, a third-party candidate received more than 10% in a three-way race, and they are running scared. So, yeah, this is just another one of those examples. And it says here, getting a reasonable amount of petition signatures to appear on a ballot is logical. I'm not so sure I agree here, but let's just read. To keep a ballot from being too crowded. You know, you must protect the voters from themselves. But parties that nominate candidates at convention don't have ballots that could be crowded, so there is no reason for such signatures. It would be like requiring someone to collect 10 signatures before being allowed to enter their local church, and this is a quote from Richard Winger, editor of Ballot Access News. I don't believe in that crowded ballot argument. I believe, you know, that ballot censorship is just bad, and we don't need to protect voters from themselves, but that's neither here nor there. Representative Kurt Nisley, a Republican, a different Republican than had submitted the bill, was going to offer an amendment before the bill was pulled, and this amendment would have kept in the signature requirements, but in exchange it would have granted any party with ballot access an automatic seat on the state and county election boards. And he said, if we're going to require minor parties who have achieved ballot access to submit signatures to election boards prior to nominating their candidates, they should have a voice on that board. He is absolutely right. So I do want to give credit where credit is due to that particular Republican. So that bill would have saddled the Libertarian Party of Indiana candidates with the primary election requirements without the benefit of being in the primary or even having a voice in the review process. We constantly have to be vigilant and fight for our ballot access. So I'm going to clean up this wing a little more, see if there's any comments. Otherwise, that's all I have for you right now. Don't have any other clips lined up, and unless anyone has any questions of any subjects, pretty much open now if you want to discuss LNC, party, anything basically. I'm going to give it a few moments. If not, I will see you guys later. This won't be live, but I'll probably be recording another video to submit tonight. Oh, and one thing I did want to tell you, I was on Tom Woods earlier today, and that show will be released, I think, later this week. So I hope you'll look for that. I certainly will let you know when that is available. Okay, that got cleaned up pretty decently. I'm never happy though, am I? All right, everyone. You have an awesome day, and again, look forward to talking to you soon. Let's close this out.
You gotta take what you're given, that's how we live it. Don't be mad at the system, it's simply how we've existed. I hear a lot of people talking like they politicians and choose to be an accountant because it's safe in the business.